Good
If you
afternoon.
haven't done so already, Patrick will be popping in a sign-in sheet with the SJSU Career Center, and you can go ahead and sign in with us there. Thank you so much for attending the SJSU Career Center Employer Insights with SAP. We'd love to know who's in the room. If students, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to our guest today, just let us know your name, your major, and what school year you are.
Good afternoon. My name is
I think he went on mute.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
This is my name is Abhinav Bhatnagar. My major is accounting, and I'm from San Jose State. I'm graduating this semester. Thank you.
Nice.
Hi, everyone. My name is Miranda Morrison. I am an international business major here at SJSU, and I'm also graduating this semester. And I'm very excited to be here today.
Welcome, Miranda.
Hi everyone, my name is Pallavi and my major is business analytics. I attend San Jose State and I'm a third year.
Welcome.
Hi, my name is Chloe and I'm studying psychology. I'll be graduating next semester here at SJSU. Nice to meet you all.
Okay, we can go ahead and start. It's been 2 minutes. We've given some students time to file in. I'd love to welcome everybody to the San Jose State Career Center Employer Insights with SAP. And without further ado, we can go ahead and get started. All right, so just so everybody knows, we're gonna have a brief introduction with all of our speakers and guests today, and we will go through the questions, and then SAP will go over their opportunities, and then we can have the student Q&A session at the end. So welcome. I'd love to introduce our host today. My name is Edlyn Hernandez, and I'm an employer engagement specialist. And I'd love to introduce my esteemed colleague, Larissa Bates. You can go ahead and introduce yourself, Larissa.
Hello, everyone. My name is Larissa. I am the career counselor for business, financial services, and logistics, and I'm happy to co-host this event today with my colleague, Edlyn, and welcome.
Thank you. And without further ado, I'd love to introduce our guest speaker for today. Veronica, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Veronica, and I'm the lead brand designer at SAP in a company called New Ventures and Technologies. A team called New Ventures and Technologies within SAP. Nice to meet you. Super excited to be here.
Thank you, Veronica. All right, we can just go ahead and jump into the questions then. So here are just some of the insights of the questions that we'll be asking. So Veronica, can you tell us a bit about your role at SAP and how you got started in your career?
Yes, so what I do at SAP, so a part of our job at, so this team I'm in called New Ventures and Technologies, we basically invest in innovators and we help them create products, right? That eventually will become a part of the core SAP. So what I do as a brand designer is I come up with brand systems. I come up with, like, for example, the logo, and I help them with their brand guides. I also help the communications team. So I'm actually a brand and comms designer. And so I do everything from like templates of like emails to creating a lot of fun campaigns, branding campaigns, and everything that comes with a campaign for digital and print. So if you see like event billboards and stuff like that, or websites, I do that as well. So it's a really fun role. I get to work with not just the communication marketing team, which is all the stuff that involves like being able to promote our team, but also with the ventures. So it's awesome because we basically create brand from nothing, and it's always really nice to see the people who created these ventures happy with their brand. Yeah, and so that's a part of what I do at SAP. As far as how I got my career started, so I did go to San Jose State and I graduated from the BFA program. So graphic design BFA. I love that program. I would say that I probably wouldn't be where I'm at today if it wasn't for that program. I feel like we had a really, love our teachers and all the classes, and that's where I found my passion for branding as well. I did a lot of internships while I was in school, and I actually worked in like a variety of different companies. So I worked from everything from design agencies to like small startups to nonprofit, huge companies like Google and SAP, and smaller ones like Medallia. So definitely a array of different experience. So I actually started as a production designer, and then I went all the way to lead brand designer, which is where I'm at now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your great background, Veronica. I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Larissa Bates. She'll be asking the next question.
Thank you. And I love hearing the progression, right? Like it wasn't just that you started in that position, right? There was skills and experience that you built over time to get to where you are today.
Okay.
So with that in mind, I know you talked a little bit briefly about internships. So can you dive into that a little bit more and tell us how can students build relevant skills and experiences from those internships and jobs? And do class projects count as experience? And the club, curricular activities, does that count as well?
Yes, I will say the number one skill that was the most important when I was in the BFA and just at San Jose State, and even just in any class, was group projects and conflict resolving, knowing how to resolve conflicts, knowing how to communicate. That is like the number one thing that you need for any kind of experience for internships and jobs. So I would say, those like building those skills and knowing how to like work with others is so important. And also, being a designer, we're constantly giving feedback. There's a constant like constructive criticisms that happens when you're designing. And the BFA really prepared us for that, because we do group projects, we have to put all our stuff on the wall all the time in every class, and everyone basically gets to like tell us what they think about our design. And that part of school is really something that was helpful when I was doing the internship. So I would say like building the relevant skills of just knowing how to communicate is really important, but also I think any kind of practice that you can have. Like I actually did freelance even when I just started my classes, because I love branding. So I actually just started doing like creating logos even just when I started at San Jose State. So knowing how to work with clients is also really important. Knowing how to like kind of create that like relationship between a client, you and a client, the freelancer and the client, is definitely really relevant. So, and it's like, can you practice being an internship for an internship? Yeah, I mean, for the BFA, we actually had to do 100 hours of an internship. And I was a working student. So unfortunately, I mean, I had to work full time. So I had to take jobs. I had to work while I was going to school. And I had to, so that helped me prepare a lot, because I was actually working. I wasn't just only doing school. So I think, that's for me, that was a relevant skill as well, knowing how to work and go to school at the same time. And that really prepared me. And I want to say that class projects are extremely important. I still have some of my favorite class projects in my portfolio, actually, and I will post my portfolio. I have a link later, but sometimes when you're in school, especially for a design student, you're creating some of the most fun, exciting projects while you're at school. And then you get into the real world, and it's not always very exciting. I mean, sometimes I'm working on like PowerPoint templates a whole day, and it's just a part of the job. But, I love that when you're doing interviews, it's really important to have those passion projects. And it's, whether or not it's a school project or not, it helps create confidence. So if you're talking about a project that you really love and you're interviewing, for example, for internships or jobs, it really helps create this sort of confidence when you're talking to the interviewer, and it helps you talk about your projects better. It helps you explain, your thoughts and like creative process. So I would say definitely projects, passion projects, class projects, can really work, and you can always cycle them through once you have more work. But like I have this, sorry. Oh, okay. So I actually have this one project called Limoni. So it's a food truck brand that we created at school. And what I did is I ended up applying for all these design awards with the project. So it's kind of like you can actually also get awards, and that helps you get noticed as well from those class projects. So you can like submit them. So it's like there's a few things that you could do, but Limoni is like one of my favorite projects, and I actually spent probably 2 years after school developing it. So it's one of my highlights projects, next to like the Google work that I've done, next to that's SAP and the Medallia works that I've done. And it's just as, I love it just as much. And whenever I get someone to ask me about it, I love talking, I can talk about it for an hour. So I would say yes, very, important. As far as co-curricular activities, I would say that for me, because I was a working student, I come from a low income background and I've worked my whole life, and I've always had to work very, very hard to get, I had to work very hard to get through school. And I didn't really have a lot of time for like other things other than like doing internships, making sure I can pay my bills, making sure I get A's in my classes, making sure my projects, I have enough project for a portfolio when I graduate. So I think for me, co-curricular activities are still internships. They're still, passion projects. Whenever you can talk to someone that you admire, if you admire their work, if there's someone in a position that you really admire, and that's a part of, we'll probably get to that, but a part of doing like cold interviews and stuff, or email, doing the part of the networking can also be activities that can be very helpful just to learn like, what is that position going to look like if I would be in that someday,
Yeah, I love how you talked about the many different ways that you can get experience, from your coursework to freelancing, just trying it out, all the way to, taking what you've learned in those jobs that you've had throughout your career and applying that long term. So thank you for sharing it. And I'll pass it over to Edlin.
And I do just want to say real quick that I can't enough say that communication and knowing how to conflict resolve and doing those group projects in school are probably the best experience you can ever have when it comes to being in the real world.
Yeah, so group projects are definitely important then. So we can go ahead and move on to question number 3. What are your top resume tips? Does an actual person ever read a resume submitted online?
Yes, so this is a really, really good question because there's a lot of misconceptions about this. I would say first, I want to go into the part where, yes, people do. So the person who's looking at the resumes, that's the recruiters, right? They spend about 10 to 30 seconds or less just scanning through keywords. So what they're gonna do is they're gonna look at the job description and they're gonna look at the keywords, project management, typography skills, all the fun little keywords that they're looking for. And they're going to look at your resume and they're going to look, okay, can I find those keywords in there? Do they have the relevant years experience? So it's a very quick thing. And then they filter it through and then they give it to the hiring manager. So you have to think about what is really relevant, for the person, for the recruiter, right? It's actually, in a way you want to get through that first step. So people always say, okay, well, if I don't know anyone from the company, can that still work? Yeah, it can. I mean, I've gotten a lot of jobs. I've gotten jobs without knowing anyone from the company, right? I just kind of submitted as much as I could. It's always nice to have someone that introduce you to the hiring manager, or but that's only like a small step, right? They're still going to filter your resume so you don't waste the hiring manager's time. So if the hiring manager is the art director, which for a designer, a lot of my managers are art directors or head of design, they don't even get to look. Like there's at least two process before they even, two steps before they even get to look at it. So my top tips is like, keep it very simple, make sure you look at the job description, look at the keywords, accommodate that into your resume, and just remember that they really don't have more than 10 seconds almost. So it's like, just make it easy for them. Make sure the experience is very, I like to have an objective. I like to have just like the company, how many years I've been there, and then 2 to 3 bullet points of like the steps that I've done. So, not a lot of noise. Like sometimes I know that people like to do infographics and stuff, which is fine, but just really think of like, what does their recruiter want to look at? Yeah.
That's wonderful. So definitely keep it simple, keep it relevant.
Yes. White
I'm
space. One page.
Yeah,
Sorry,
exactly.
one page, just one page, and a lot of white space.
I'm actually going to hand it over to Patrick right now. He did let me know that we have a question.
We've
Patrick?
been getting like some wonderful questions from the chat lately. I got like a private message about a question that was, would having a BA in design studies alone be sufficient for getting connected with jobs with good companies?
Yeah, so I think this is a really good question. I think our school is a network is really amazing. And yes, I mean, I did the BFA and I took a couple extra years to get that degree. But I know a lot of amazing designers who have just a BA, I mean, I'm a little biased because I really love our program. But at the same time, let's just remember that it's not just about like BA/BFA. It's about your portfolio. It's about, are you detail oriented? Are you good at working with people? Are you good at explaining yourself? Are you good at communicating? And the way you present yourself in the interview is going to be very, very crucial. So, knowing how to talk about yourself, about your work, that stuff, that's culture fit. Like people aren't just going to hire you just because you have a BFA or BA. They're going to look at, are you a culture fit? Do you have a good portfolio? Always, definitely have a portfolio. I can't tell you how many times I've looked at some profiles, like when I'm interviewing and I'm looking at profiles and there's like not even a design portfolio, and I'm like, I don't understand. But yeah, just remember that it's really about how you present yourself, and it's really about how much you put yourself out there. And both programs are really amazing. I'm such a bias because I love San Jose State art program, so just like the design program.
Definitely. Awesome. Thank you so much, Veronica. And Patrick, no more questions
We have
on
a
that
few
topic?
We have a few questions. I'm going to raise one of them because like it's on the topic of resumes, which we were just talking about. Nia, I do want to get to your question and we'll get to that. I think I'm making a note of that and raising it in the Q&A at the end. But regarding the question about resumes, there's a section for the resumes for objective statements. And do you have any ideas or examples of what a good objective statement would look like on a resume?
Yeah, so and just so to be transparent, some people would say that you don't need it. I think it's important to have an objective because it's kind of like you're telling them, like, it's like if you look at your website, that's like your header, right? That's like your banner, like this is my value proposition, basically. So you're selling yourself. So for example, for me, I like to keep it pretty general, especially because if I like to have an open mind. So if someone's looking at my resume and if they're looking for, lead visual designer versus lead brand designer, even though there's a little bit of, specifications on both, I like to say I'm looking to work at like a creative environment alongside senior designers and creative directors. So, I'm looking for a creative design role, so it's like you can be very general or you can be more specific. I'm looking for a brand design role working with a marketing team, a global marketing team, something like that. It really just depends, but just keep it very simple, just a few words, maybe 8 words or something like that. Just so, but in the end, I feel like, yeah, they kind of look through it so fast that it just needs to be very like think if you, I guess I'm just thinking if you're like driving through the highway and looking at billboards, like how much time do you really have to absorb all that information, so yeah, simple, keep it simple.
Keep it simple, keep it general. Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Larissa, who will be asking the next question. Larissa?
Thank you. I really love that metaphor of keeping it simple, billboard,
Less is
driving
more.
quickly. Yes, definitely. And just for resumes in general, right? Shifting over to networking, what are some of your top tips on how to build a professional network? And what would you say works and doesn't work on LinkedIn?
Yeah, so I think I think it's really good to kind of broaden your mind on what network really is. Is it really just like, we're going to go to a network event and start talking to people and give our business cards? Like, is that really networking? I actually feel like anyone that you work, so any person you know at school, a classmate is your network, your teachers are your network, people you are interviewing with can become your network. You know, people you admire. I like to sometimes, so if you give anyone enough time, they'll talk about, you know, people love to share their experience. So you have to remember that most likely you're not bothering them. It's like, I love when students or just when people in general like send me messages and ask like, how do you like working as a brand designer, or what's, you know, like they ask me questions and like I can talk forever about it, you know. So I think it's important to remember that, like, I actually like one-on-ones more than I like going into like big events, although those are very helpful as well. I take every opportunity I can. Also, anyone I interview with, I feel like it's really important to remember, like, you might be interviewing with someone and then you might not be a right fit for this role, but in the future, they're like, oh, I remember Veronica, she had this one project and she might actually be really perfect for this job. Like recruiters, they kind of like, if you build a relationship with recruiters, you know, I think they become a part of your network as well. And I've done like cold calls. So I've actually, if I have friends and family who know someone who is like an art director at some cool company, I ask, hey, can you introduce me so we can I want to just learn more, you know. Like, I think it's important to keep it genuine and to just kind of put yourself out there. Like if there's someone on LinkedIn that you've been following and you just really love their work or you love how they communicate, like send them a message. See, maybe they want to, you know, do a coffee chat online or some virtual coffee chat or something. And so I think that's definitely, you know, just to think about the entire picture of, you know, school, work, friends, family, they can all become a part of your network. And I feel like on LinkedIn, as far as what doesn't work, I feel like sometimes I get very random, maybe like more random spammy kind of sounding messages. And so I think just keep it very genuine so it doesn't look spammy. I would say, so people actually get the chance to, like, you know, and then I always like to say, hey, I've looked at your work and I really like this part of that design. And I would love to know a little bit more of how you got to that. And so keep it genuine and definitely think the big picture. Any person you're in class right now can become your network, you know. So.
Yeah, I really, really love that, making it specific to the person and doing your kind of research and understanding like their projects and what they've done and how you want to learn more, and just opening with curiosity. So yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, people sometimes get a little scared of the word network, like it's this big word, but it really is just relationships. It's just relationships with people. And yeah.
Yeah, so you did mention building relationships with recruiters, and just to piggyback off of that, can you share some successful interviewing in a virtual environment tips, or do nonverbal cues, dress, or background screens affect impressions of candidates?
Yeah, so I would say, as far as it comes to dress and backgrounds and stuff like that, and I think about, like, if you're going to go interview with someone in person, let's think of, like, you'll probably want the same kind of formality, you know, maybe in virtual is a little bit more casual, but like, don't dress out of bed with your pajamas and then turn on the computer and have an interview. I mean, put a little bit more of time into it, just like you would for a regular interview. So there's like a couple ways. So one of my friends, Cindy, who is actually a senior designer at Atlassian, she told me that what she loves that people do is that when she interviews people, she loves sometimes when they have like a background of like maybe them surfing or something. So have like talking points that kind of bring, you know, because you have to think about if you're not in person, you have to get your personality across somehow. And a great way to do that is really like maybe do use a Zoom background. You know, I like to keep it more simple. Sometimes I love to create patterns. So if there's a cool patterns I like, sometimes I'll put it in my Zoom and just when I'm talking to my coworkers, and because it can just be fun. But definitely, you know, eye contact is really important. I notice that when people are interviewing, they'll talk and their eyes are just not looking into the screen. So it's just like, think about the eye contact part, because you want to make that connection with the interviewer. And just the as far as first impression, just you would do the same thing, you know, when even before the pandemic, we were still doing remote interviewing. So it's actually not too different, other than the fact that now everyone is doing remote interviewing. But yeah, this is like, I you know, either have a nice solid background so it doesn't distract from you, or have something, you know, interesting in the background that talks about who you are and your personality that gets you noticed, you know.
Definitely. It's all about really trying to showcase your personality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. Let me go ahead and pass it over to Larissa.
So I love kind of what you shared about how you create your background to represent yourself visually. Just in general, describe what your creative process is in your work.
Yes, I can talk about that forever, but let's just go through my creative process with logo, for example. So when I'm working on a logo, basically after I get all the information I need, obviously the creative briefs that I need from the client or the ventures that I'm working with. One thing for me that's really big is I actually love to create huge mood boards. So basically I look at Pinterest and Dribbble, and I look online everywhere for inspiration. And I kind of create sort of a deck. So I create a deck with all this mood board stuff, and then I look at it, and then I start looking at it and thinking of ideas. You know, it's actually really important when you're doing brand identities, logos, really important to understand like what their mission, vision, and brand values are. So that stuff needs to be done before I start even sketching. But then once I have that, I'm a huge fan of the pencil, just pen and paper. So I just love sketching, like not digitally, but just start just like sketching on paper. And then from that, I basically take it to digital. And so what I always say that one of my superpowers is like exploration. So I even when I lead design for events or for campaigns, one of my favorite things to do is just do like a crazy amount of like sketches and just think of it like not have a limit on it, where I can just think of anything if everything is possible, and then kind of take it out from there. So filter it out, talk, and then get feedback from the clients. I think a part of being a designer is like you have to keep getting feedback all the time. And a part of being a good freelancer or just a good communicator and a designer is knowing how to ask for feedback when you need it. So a part of the creative process is always like feedback, iterations, feedback, iterations. And then I usually create the logo, and then we do like rounds usually. So we do like round 1 logo, round 2, we show them options, and then they keep kind of filtering the options until they are really happy with one thing. And then a big part of also just being a brand designer is knowing how to do brand guides and brand systems. So that's a whole other part of the jobs. It's really fun as well. So it's a part of my creative process for a logo, for example.
Do you want to elaborate a little bit more on what the brand systems, like just kind of a brief preview of what that looks like?
Yeah, so it's really important that that usually happens with the brand guide, but it's important that we can show what it could look like on a website, that we can show what it could look like on a shirt, that it can show what it could look like on an email. So there's like a whole array of assets that needs to be done usually when a logo or a brand is created. And so the brand system is basically creating like consistency across, tell me if I'm going a little too jargony, but consistency across all digital and like platforms and just all platforms in general. So we want to make sure that if I'm creating a campaign, for example, that it looks really good on the website, but then if I'm creating a whole bunch of swag, like, you know, like water bottles and shirts and, you know, or even just flyers and stuff like that, that it's all consistent and the system works, but it's also flexible. So let's say 2 years from now, we can take this brand system and even like make it, you know, have it grow. Like, I always think the brand is like alive. So, you know, we just want to think of like what it looks like now and does it have opportunity to even be better in 2 to 3 years from now, you know?
Yeah, and thank you for kind of elaborating on that. I think it's helpful to understand that it's not just one platform, right? It's all of these different art forms that you're working with as a brand designer. So thank you for sharing that.
And then just as a note, that a brand designer is usually also a communications designer on the marketing team. So you have usually your product designers on the product team, and then you have your brand designers and marketing designers on the marketing team. So usually every brand job I've had is always communications and brand. So I'm in charge of helping create all the promotional assets, all the promotional stuff when it comes to the brand of the company. And that always, it's just, I always do such an array of things, you know? So yeah, it's wide.
Yeah, definitely. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that, Veronica. And finally, our final question of the session will be, are you hiring?
So I would say that I'm not sure that, so right now with the pandemic, I think there's a lot of, you know, I'm not 100% sure if my team at so we have New Ventures and Technologies, and within that team, there's another team called SAPIO. I don't know if anyone has heard of that one, but SAP in general is always looking for people, and there's a really awesome program. I actually know people who've gone to the program who now work full time with my team. It's called SAP Next Talent, and I have a slide where you can get the link to that. And basically it's like a rotational program at SAP. So you become a full-time SAP employee and you go through different teams as either doing engineering, and this is for recent graduates. So you do engineering or you do like design or UX. And it's like all this like different array of things you could do from engineering to design jobs. And they gonna do like 6 months in each team. And then if the team has room for someone to join full-time or join permanently, that they ask them to join. And so it's a really, really cool program. I really encourage everyone who is interested in SAP products or any, you know, SAP jobs, just look at that site and apply. They take people all the time. So
yeah, and with that, we can go ahead and segue to the next slide, and you can talk more about your portfolio, your LinkedIn, and some of the careers at SAP.
Yes. So my online portfolio, if you are a designer and are looking to see what a simple portfolio could look like, I would probably just, you can look at also the resume. My resume is there as well. So encouraging if anyone wants to, look at the portfolio for an example. And also I'm on LinkedIn. I love saying hello, message me, connect. If, happy to talk on LinkedIn as well and connect. And as far as there's SAP resources there, so you can see SAP Next Talent for recent graduates internship program. And then you see there's also SAP careers. I'm not sure, there's always like, so what's really great about SAP is, I would say it's such a huge company. I mean, I think it's almost just as big as Google as far as people. And they have so many fellowships and so many sort of teams that people are constantly like, if they want to try something new, they'll just like apply to, a new team, try to get a fellowship or, apply to a position in a different team and stuff like that. So there's like kind of a lot of opportunity for growth and for just trying like new things. And again, I think the SAP Next Talent program, they're just really great at being able to like introduce you to new things, so to new teams. So And then if you need to know a little bit more about diversity and inclusion at SAP, I put a couple links there as well.
Wonderful, thank you. Now I think we can go ahead and open the floor to some questions. Patrick?
Yes, so I'm going to address a question that I was receiving earlier in the chat. And by all means, during this time, feel free to type in your questions in the chat window. Otherwise, when there's an available opportunity to speak, feel free to unmute your mic and just voice your question out loud. But the question that we received earlier is about design challenges, and have you ever experienced having or going through a design challenge as part of the hiring process? And if so, what was your approach to it?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. I noticed that startups are very much into testing and and design challenges. It's a normal part of, especially, they kind of want to see you're a lot of that time they want to see your creative process. So they want to understand how did you get from A to C? And I think a lot of times what happens is it's kind of when usually how it happens is you talk to the recruiter, there's the screen talk for 30 minutes or so, and then you talk to the hiring manager, and then you talk to 3 other people on the team. And that part right there is when usually they ask you to, after you talk to 3 other people for 3 hours, they'll be like, okay, well, we really like you. Can you work on this? We want to kind of test your skills. They don't say test. I say test because I think it's still a test. But it's we have a challenge for you. How would you create the mobile version for these websites? How would you innovate this landing page, stuff like that? And what I would do for that is I would kind of ask for as much time as I possibly can. A lot of times they usually give you a couple of days to work on it. And it's really important that you think about, because I'm very big into exploration, I like to always have 2 versions of the challenge. I have one version of the challenge that's exactly a safe sort of option for what they ask for. And then I have another version that's hey, if I could do whatever whatever I want, this is what I would do, And that I think they really do appreciate seeing your creative process and how you could take one thing to the next level. So I've had that with, I had that when I was working at definitely a couple companies, and also whenever I'm interviewing, they let me know, by the way, we have a design challenge. It's usually pretty fun. So to me, it's actually a chance to play around with stuff and think of new ideas. So, but not all companies do it. Some companies they start in when I was at one company, they started they did it to me, but then future people came in and they didn't have to do it, and I was like, oh, that's okay. I had to, it's because sometimes it's makes it longer. They don't want you to lose interest, and so it can make it a longer process. It just depends on each hiring manager, to be honest, and how much they also want you in the team.
Yeah, definitely. Go ahead, Patrick.
I'm gonna open the floor up to anyone who wants to unmute their mics and voice their questions if they would like to. I'll give you all a few minutes for that, but other than that, I'll keep reading questions from the chat.
Hey, Veronica. How's it going?
Great. How are you? Happy to be here.
Awesome. So I had a quick question about when you're applying for jobs, were you submitting a creative resume, if you know what I mean, something that's gridded out and looks very designy versus something that's more just standard and more legible overall, I guess? Which do you find works better or do you have more success with, I guess?
Yeah, so I would say that some of the feedback I've gotten on my portfolio, so usually when I apply, I like to give my portfolio out, and then if they're interested, so I'll give that link, Veronica Ronnet Designs, right? I'll give that link out. And if they're interested, they'll usually ask for more work. So if they're looking for more, to see more motion kind of experience, they'll ask for that, or storyboarding experience. If they're looking for more experience in web design, they'll ask about that. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll create PDFs with process. So because your portfolio, you could show study cases, but usually I like to create nice process in a PDF, a deck, where they can see step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And that's mostly if they ask for it. Now, if it's a really big company and you really just want to give that to them as soon as possible, you can actually email and to them and show you've done some extra work. You want them to see the work you're doing. that's appropriate. I like to keep it simple with my portfolio. I would say that some of the feedback, sorry, I meant to say that earlier. Some of the feedback I've gotten is that they like that it's easy to kind of target like the companies that I work for. It's easy to see, you know, it's like, it has like the white space. It has, you know, it has enough personality. I mean, you can see the crazy fire I have in there, but it's like contained. So it's really up to you. I'm not a big fan of like crazy light shows, because you want people to focus on your project, not as much on like, it doesn't need to be like, you know, you don't have to pay someone $1,000 to create your website. You just make sure that your work is there, your resume is there, that you're explaining your work right, you're showing the right, you know, you're showing nice mock-ups. You know, like, you know, if you're doing a website, you want to make it look presentable, make everything presentable. But I always say keep it simple, you know, because I've actually, again, like I've had hiring managers who told me they like the portfolio because it's very, you know, in a way it's very simple and easy to navigate. And they don't need to like click 5 things to get to a project, you know.
Right. Thank you so much. I appreciate your answer.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jordan, for asking that great question. Is there anybody else who would like to unmute themselves and ask Veronica a question?
Yeah, so is there any design tips or you would recommend for individuals who are not really pursuing a design major? How can they enhance their portfolio, and like what are some resources they can use?
So if it's, what kind of portfolio would it be though? Because I guess I'm a little bit out of the loop when it comes to outside of design. I know that, I mean, I've worked at other places before, but but as far as, so do you mean a portfolio for like, if it's like accounting or marketing
For
position?
individuals who want to pursue design, but
Oh, who want to pursue design, but are not designers?
but they're not design majors, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So yeah, so if you're starting out, I think, you know, definitely, I would always say work on your personal brand and how you present your work. Make sure you have a portfolio, make sure you have at least 3 to 4 really good projects that you are very proud of. One thing to remember is that you are only as good as your worst project. So don't put anything that you wouldn't put on the shelf in your portfolio. Even if you were like, I put like 100 hours into this, people should know. Well, if you're not happy, like use your intuition. If you don't think it's that great, I wouldn't put it up there, right? So just only put your best work up and really think about your personal brand. How are you presenting yourself? It's not just about visual, right? It's not just about your logo or you know, your visual design on your online portfolio, which you should always have an online portfolio. Number 1 rule, if you want to be a designer, have an online portfolio, I would say. But it's also how you talk about yourself. So just remember that a lot of the first impressions you get in the interviews and the jobs that you want has to do with how you talk about yourself, how you talk about your work. You know, so just always remember that's a huge part of design interviews.
Okay, thank you.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, that was very helpful.
I love that. So always think about your personal brand. Great. Patrick, do we have any other questions in the chat?
I'll raise a couple more that were just like typed out here. One is like a good general question. How do you explain yourself effectively, especially if like you're an applicant that may not be the best at verbal communication?
Yeah, so I do think that sometimes it can be challenging when it's, you know, because I'm just such a outgoing person that I feel like I actually really love interviewing, believe it or not. It gives me a lot of energy, and I like talking about myself and my work. So it can be really, I know it can be really challenging for some people who are maybe more shy. So I think practice makes perfect. So I actually meant to say that earlier, but don't ever say no to an interview, because it's just every interview you get, anytime a recruiter contacts you, your email, or contacts you on LinkedIn, just remember that it's always an opportunity to practice your interviewing skills and talk and practice how you talk about yourself. You know, I sometimes it's like fake it till you make it. So, you know, just practice with a friend, you know, have them ask you questions and like answer those questions, and, you know, feel comfortable with feeling uncomfortable. So, you know, it's definitely took me a lot. Like I've done probably more than 100 interviews so far in my career. And I would say that I was terrible at first. I remember even someone told me, actually, the funny thing is one of my favorite interviews, and also the worst I've had, was when I got an internship like it was an interview for an internship with IDEO. And it was literally, I was just about to graduate from the BFA, and I just didn't make any eye contact at all. I was just so nervous and excited at the same time. And I was like, oh my God, IDEO likes me, you know, and it was like this really cool moment. But I also kind of didn't think I brought my best, because I didn't even like practice. I was just like, I just was like, oh, I'll just say whatever comes to my mind. So I think the more practice you have interviewing, the better you get at it. So don't get too frustrated, because just remember, everyone's going through the same thing. Sometimes, you know, you're interviewing them just as much as then they're interviewing you. So just remember that you have the power as well, because you want to be somewhere in a good culture with people who respect you, you know, and you have to also interview them, ask them questions. So have a list of questions you want to ask them too. And they actually really appreciate when you ask them, and that can also break the ice.
I say that's very true, and we get that with a lot of our employers. As an FYI, we did post Larissa and I posted some really great resources we recommend from the Career Center for getting practice with interviews. We have Big Interview, which is like a really great software for specifically getting adjusted to virtual interviews, which is fantastic for this recruiting environment. But if you're the type to like to refer to a guide of like, here are some steps, there's a fantastic and very robust PDF that's our overall interviewing guide with great recommendations for that.
Yeah.
Larissa, I don't know if you have any like suggestions or any other additional details about that.
Yes, I was going to add yet another link. Just a reminder that our career counselors, such as myself, we do offer mock interviews as well. So if you wanted to meet with any of us to practice and get feedback, you can do that. But Big Interview is a great resource if you are not able to come in and meet with a career counselor virtually.
And I just wanted to add that just remember, the more passionate you are talking about what you're talking about your subject, the more confident you look, and then the more unnoticeable you get. So just remember, it's all about like how excited you are to be there, or to talk to them, or to talk about the work you've done. That really helps with the confidence part.
Definitely. It can be like a very nerve-wracking process, but I love what you said. You have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. I think that's a very much true statement. We can go ahead and ask students to unmute if they do have any questions. Students, feel free to unmute yourselves to ask Veronica anything.
Ask me anything.
Hey, Veronica, sorry again. I just had a question about how you found out that brand design is what you wanted to do, because personally, I recently graduated, and I mean, even during my time in the design program, I kind of failed to discover what my personal style even was. I mean, so I just wanted to ask you how you discovered your own style, I guess, and how you discovered that brand design was what you wanted to do with that style, with your design.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a good question, because I think that a lot of students, and actually, I think not even design students, people in general struggle with who, you know, it's a part of like, who am I? What's special about me? You know, why should, you know, and also it's also about like knowing, being able to talk about how good you are, like, you know. But for me, so the moment that I fell in love with branding, and I would say that is when I was, again, I was in school, and we were doing the food truck brand project with my teacher, Connie Huang, she's awesome. But I realized that I spent 2 days just creating a ton of explorations for the brand. And I realized how much I loved it. And it was like, at that moment, I felt like I'm really good at this. Like, this is my strength. Like, I want to do this more, and I want to, you know, but it took me a while. Like, it's not like I started doing branding as soon as I finished college, right? University. most designers, they have to kind of go through, you have to kind of pay your dues, you know, as they say, you gotta be, you know, do production designer, help the senior designers, you know. So I started out like kind of very much low in the chain in a way, and kind of worked my way up. And every time I did, it's like, actually design is very general. So sometimes you can come into a visual design position or graphic design position. Those are very similar titles, but you can come in and actually do, if it's a small company, you get to do a lot of different things. So sometimes you even get to help with the product. Sometimes you help the marketing team with like brand messaging, which is really, really fun. As far as knowing how is it, you know, the brand design thing, it was probably just while I was doing all these event branding at Medallia, I started doing all these event stuff, and I realized like I'm really, really good at this. Like this is really fun. It's like actually really fun. I spent hours and hours and hours exploring, and that's, you know, a part of what I love to do is exploring. And that's the same actually things that I did for my brand, right? So when I was working on my brand, that was during the BFA program, and we were working on our portfolio, and I realized like, so I used to live in Israel. So I'm Israeli Argentinian. Actually, I was born in Argentina. I lived in Israel, came to the US. So Hebrew is a big part of my life, and I actually miss speaking Hebrew a lot when I came to the US. But I decided to sort of create a logo that's like a mix of the Hebrew and English letters, forms, and it was really obvious to me that a part of my personal brand has to show my culture and has to show a part of my personality. And I'm a very, you know, when I think about design in general, I love to explore, and I like to kind of be bold with my, you know, I like to kind of be bold and then reel it back in if I need, instead of doing the opposite way around. And because exploring felt like such a big talent that I had, I wanted to show that in my personal brand. And so I would say for me, it didn't take that long to kind of, you know, it was hours of exploration, basically, of looking at different logos, looking at different brand elements and stuff that I could use, and thinking, will this work on my website? Will this work on my resume? How can I show that brand across, not just across my website and resume, but also how I talk about myself, right? And how I, in interviews. So just stretching that brand across throughout the entire process of, you know, for my career is something that, you know, it was really fun to do. So for me, it was like, if I feel joy doing it, and I get those butterflies in my stomach, like, oh my God, this is a great idea. Kind of just like go for it. I think a part of, but it's like a error and trial and error, you know, like, oh, well, this doesn't work. Okay, well, I'll try something else, you know? So right. Just remember that there's no right or wrong in the way too, you know, it's like, maybe you know, today you want to focus on one element, and then 2 years from now you change, and you might want to focus on something else. So
yeah.
A growing experience.
Thank you.
Great, that's wonderful. Patrick, do we have any other questions in the chat?
There were a couple of really great questions about the topic of portfolios. One of them being, do employers honestly spend time reading through body text on case studies for portfolios? Like, is it like something that they focus on?
So actually, one thing I forgot to mention is, so I did mention the keywords. So a lot of times, again, they spend like the people who are looking at your resume first are always recruiters. So just remember that it never goes to the manager or the person who will be your manager, which is the hiring manager first. It always goes to the recruiter, and they spend less than 30 seconds glancing through, making sure that you have the keywords, right? From the job description. So just remember that part. And sorry, what was the other part of the question again? Can you?
The matter was like about portfolios and like students who are like trying to find like a balance of like what they should focus on. And so like when it comes to like case studies and like building like a text describing like the case study, how much time should they spend on it? How much time do recruiters look at it?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, so that's a good question. So they look at your resume and they make sure that it's filtered through, you have the right words. And then they send your portfolio to the hiring manager. And now a lot of times in the creative industry, you do get recruiters who are more focused on creative versus like if they're just like looking for someone in accounting, for example. So they get trained to look at your portfolio and make sure that, you know, you have a portfolio online and that there's projects for the hiring managers to look at. And then once the hiring manager looks at it, and I would say from my experience, because I've done this before where we were interviewing people, looking at their portfolios, deciding whether or not it's worth talking to them, you know, and it's worth spending the time interviewing. For me, for a designer, it's always about the work, right? Your portfolio says everything about you as a designer. So, so it's like glancing through, making sure, you know, are you strong on typography? You know, do you have enough, you know, work? Is your work current? Is it, you know, a lot of times, for example, if it's very kind of dated feeling, it's like you're looking for people that will come and elevate your brand. So you want to make sure that the work that they have is like fits the company mission, you know. So yes, they do look through it, but not for a very long time. I would say that probably spend a good, again, minutes or two looking at the ones that they really, really like, or that we really, really like. And then kind of, okay, like these people, like this, from 100 people, these 5 people have a really, really strong portfolio. Let's see if they have a culture fit too, you know? So I think that answers the question, but yeah, please just remember that as a designer, portfolio is everything. Also make sure your resume is like nicely designed. So, because we look at the design of the resume as well. So.
Yeah, those are some great tips, Veronica. And I think we might have time for one more question. Patrick?
I was going to mention that the other half of that question on the subject of portfolios was finding a balance between storytelling, what the project design process looks like, versus like portraying, here's what the final result of looks like. Like, how does one find a balance in portraying those in their portfolio?
So I think for portfolios, I like to say that some people do have case studies there where you can see, you know, like all this, I mean, it's like a flood of text and information, where I think keep it like when you're sending it first, when you're first starting it out to a company, just remember, like, they're just going to glance through to make sure that you have the key qualifications. And so if just keep it visual, you know, don't have too much text, keep it visual. If you're showing, like, for example, I like to show my design process in pictures, you know, so I'll show like, this is how I created the logo, and then I'll just show like all the mock-ups. And then when you're doing the interviews, usually always come to an interview with a PDF deck. And in that deck, make sure you have at least 3 projects you can talk about. And that's where you can really showcase your process and the case study. So focus more on cleaning up your portfolio, making it very simple, easy to glance, make it, you know, visually attractive, and then show the process when you're actually interviewing, you know. That would be the balance that I would suggest, but everyone does it differently. That worked for me in the past.
It's a focus of show, don't tell.
Yeah, in a way, yeah.
Is what I'm gathering from it.
Yeah, and I would say that again, yeah, when you're actually interviewing, that's when you really want to kind of go through the process of, you know, of the campaign or the product.
Great. Thank you, Veronica. I do see that Sarah Chan has her hand raised. Sarah, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself to ask Veronica the last question.
Yeah. Hi, Veronica. So I'm currently a business major, interested in UI and UX design, and I wanted to ask in terms of like what a portfolio should look like and what kind of recruiters are looking for, because I know, like, I see your portfolio is like pretty diverse. So like from a recruiter's standpoint, what do you think like recruiters are kind of looking for in the specific portfolio?
Yeah, so I would say, gosh, design is just so general, right? UX, UI, it kind of overlaps a lot with visual design and with sometimes even with branding, you know. So what I would do is look for people who are doing the same thing, see what their portfolio looks like, kind of take notes on that, and make sure that maybe if you're targeting towards a certain company, you can always like go into your portfolio and like edit it to make sure that it's targeting towards that specific company that you're applying to. So you can always like change your projects around if needed. You can always, again, I love decks, so always have a deck ready to send out if you need some case studies, UX or UI case studies. So I think that might answer the question. I think it really varies, but one thing that I would do is definitely look at other people who have portfolios and see kind of what they do, and if that can help, that can also work for you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Great, thank you. And I'd really just love to thank our guest for today, Veronica. You had some wonderful insights. A big round of applause for you. And students, we would love to hear your feedback on this type of event so we can keep on bringing you this type of content. Patrick will be popping in a link for the feedback form at the end, and it does give you a chance to win a $20 Amazon gift card.
And feel free to say hi on LinkedIn. If you have more questions, I love questions. So just feel free to send me more if you need.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you so much for attending. And the Employer Insights with SAP has concluded.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Have a
everyone.
wonderful Friday, everyone.
Happy weekend.
Bye, guys.
Bye.